just good morning, good afternoon and good evening to everyone. My name is Gareth James Lloyd and I'm a Senior Advisor at the UNEP-DHI Partnership, where one of our focus areas is on water quality. It's my job to be facilitator of this webinar today, and I have Maya Bertule, also from the Centre, providing technical support. If you'd like to learn more about the UNEP-DHI Partnership and what we do, please check out our website at www.unepdhi.org, but not right now, please. The main purpose of this webinar series is to raise people's awareness about the importance of water quality and to introduce participants to the main challenges of water quality on our water resources, as well as ways in which these challenges are being addressed. The first webinar in this series, which we had a week or so ago, focused on global goals and some of the lessons learned in water quality, with case studies from both Europe and India. The aim of this second webinar is to go into a little bit more detail on some of those key challenges. On the agenda today, we will have Claus Jørgensen, water quality expert at DHI, talking a little bit about why is water quality essential for human health and well-being. Then we have Jørgen Krogsgaard, talking about water quality management, he's a water quality management and modeling expert at DHI, and he's going to be talking a little bit about ways in which natural processes and human activities impact water quality. And then finally, wrapping up, we have Jesper Dennisø, who's also a water quality expert at DHI, and Jesper will be talking about water scarcity in relation to climate change and how that impacts on water quality. The plan is for each presentation to take approximately 10 minutes, with enough time for 1 or 2 questions immediately after each one. There should be some time at the end to take some additional questions, so we're going to plan for that. In the panel on the right of your screen, you should be able to see a box for submitting questions, so please feel free to make good use of that. All these water quality webinars are recorded and made publicly available on YouTube, and you can also access them from our website, unepdhi.org. I'll include the link towards the end of this webinar. We're always looking to improve the quality of our work, so we'd be very grateful if you could use a couple of minutes to fill in a feedback form that we'll be sending you at the end of the webinar in a day or two, and that will also include a link to the recording. So without further ado, I think I will ask Maya to make Claus the speaker, and hand over to Claus. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Claus Jørgensen. I'm a microbiologist and I have been with DHI for more than 20 years. I work mostly with hygiene and assessment of health risks associated with human contact to drinking water, bathing water and wastewater. I will be giving you some information about why it's essential for human health, why water quality is essential for human health and well-being. So, I went back to the Human Development Report from 2006, and there's they cited here that the global crisis in water consigns large segments of humans to lives of poverty, vulnerability, and insecurity. So that is a main reason of focusing on water quality, and some of the points that explain this I will go through just briefly. So it was assessed at that time that approximately half of the people in the developing world were suffering from diseases associated to inadequate provision of water and sanitation. That's a lot of people. The children did not go to school for the same reasons. 443 million school days were lost. And another thing that is maybe not so often thought about is that if you don't have water in your household, you need to carry it, and women have been shouldering the largest burden of this. Approximately in these households, 64% of the households, the women have been responsible for that. So they have spent time and power on getting water. We know that women are very essential to development, so they have less time to care about their families. You can also see that children are fetching water as well, mostly girls, and when they fetch water, they do not have time to go to school, which is also a hindrance to development. For the Millennium Development Goals for water and sanitation, the indicators for measuring the success have been the change from unimproved drinking water or unimproved sanitation to improved drinking water or improved sanitation. So there is a ladder for each, going from low quality to high quality. And that has been the basis for following the success of the Millennium Development Goals. If we go to the UNEP-DHI Development Report in 2014, we still have this focus on that water supply and sanitation is basic to development, and it enhances resilience. And if we take a look at water supply, we see that actually 89% have in 2012 had access to improved drinking water, and by this we fulfilled the Millennium Development Goals for water supply. However, there's still a lot of people who either use unimproved water or improved water that is fecally contaminated. So, and we can see this on this graph, and in low and middle income countries, it's still Africa and Southeast Asia where a lot of people still are dying from diarrheal diseases related to drinking water. So does it help to improve the drinking water? WHO has made some estimations of that, and what we can see on this graph is that if you go from unimproved drinking water to piped water or to otherwise improved waters, we see a reduction in diarrheal diseases. The big reduction is if you go to a systematically managed water supply, then there apparently is a very big reduction in diarrheal diseases. But also if you have point sources and other basic pipe waters, if you combine that with treatment in the household and safe storage, then we actually reduce diarrheal diseases by quite a high percentage. When it comes to sanitation, there has been a tremendous increase in sanitation, improved sanitation as well, but we have not reached the goals for 2015. There are still 2 billion people have gained access to improved sanitation, but there are still 2.5 billion people using unimproved sanitation, and of these are 1 billion people still using open defecation. And as a result of that, we still have quite a lot of people dying for this reason in Africa and in Southeast Asia. So does it help? Does it help to reduce or to improve sanitation? That is going from unimproved sanitation to improved. WHO has made an estimate of this as well, and what we can see, if you go from unimproved to community sanitation, we can gain a lot of reduction in diarrheal diseases. So it looks good if we can continue in this way. And it seems also if we can protect the entire community, then we will have some additional protection from diarrhea. Now, it's not only the water quality that determines whether we get diarrhea or not. Hand washing with soap is an important factor as well. This graph shows that in high-income countries, we are more likely to use soap than in low and middle-income countries. And it has been estimated that this discrepancy is causing a lot of deaths both in Africa and in Southeast Asia. So what we want is to actually combine these. So we should do water, sanitation, and hygiene in concert. This is what we call WASH. So if we take it all together on one slide, we should improve drinking water, drinking water. We should improve sanitation and also prevent fecal matter to go to drinking water, or otherwise to infect people by improving hand wash with soap. So if we have wash and water resource management, we also reduce a lot of other illnesses where they are mentioned here to the left, and of which undernutrition, malaria, and drowning is probably the most important ones, and they may count for even higher number of deaths than the diarrhea itself. So why is it that there is this connection between water quality, drinking water quality, sanitation, and illness? And that is, of course, because there is a direct or indirect exposure to water of a poor quality. We have seen it already for drinking water and sanitation, and I'll give you some examples here for also surface water and recreational water. For drinking water, once you have provided safe drinking water and you have sanitation in place, other problems pop up. In Europe, we have this problem of increasing occurrence of legionellosis, Legionnaires' disease, which is also related to water systems. About 1 in 100,000 get infected every year in Europe. For surface water, there is often contact. This picture shows some children playing cricket in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and they lost their ball in this open sewer, and they are obviously being exposed to water of a poor quality. For recreational water, it's also a problem. We have a case here from Copenhagen in 2010, where there was an Ironman competition, and the day before there had been a severe rain and a combined sewer overflow, and as this graph shows, people actually got ill after the competition. The same investigation was made the year after, and there only few people became ill. Irrigation water is also a problem if it's contaminated. Here you see an oasis in Tanzania. It is an oasis because there's a discharge of wastewater from a pond system, and it supports the lives of farmers and also provides food for the local market. but it's also there's also a health risk associated with that. Finally, there is an example is flood water. If we've done some studies in Dhaka in Bangladesh where we did modeling, hydraulic modeling, where we had models of the sewers, surface models. We measured concentrations of Vibrio cholera, estimated exposure, and had some dose-response relations. And this is then the results that we got from health risk estimations. This is a map of the central part of Dhaka. This is the legend, which tells the relative risk of infection for small children when they walk around in the floodwater. So this is based on a model on the floodwater, on the floods in 2004. So, and you can see in some areas we think that the health risk for small children is very high, 0.1, 10% risk of getting cholera. So I hope you have some indications of the water quality and its effects on health. Thanks.
Many thanks for that presentation, Claus. We have a couple of questions which have come in from the participants that I'd like to give you, and if you could give me a quick response, that would be very helpful, given time. But the first question is from Anupam, who'd like to know how urban water quality affects children in urban areas. Could you say a few words about that, please?
So would that be surface water quality?
He actually hasn't specified, so maybe you could say a little about surface and groundwater quality. So
what we think is that surface water quality is, especially for children, an issue, an overseen issue, because when they play, they are in contact with the water, and in areas with poor sewer systems, they will be direct in contact with diluted sewage, which is a high risk. And when you walk through the water or play in the water or have your fingers in the water, then you definitely are exposed.
Okay, great, thanks for that. Another question which is a little bit open, but I hope you can respond to. It's from Hitesh. He'd like to know how water quality can be maintained in a village situation. He's specifically thinking about India, where the village is right next to cultivated land, and runoff from that land in the form which includes pesticide and fertilizer is contaminating the water source. Any suggestions on what could be done there in that kind of particular situation?
So I guess if it's drinking water, we're talking about the wells, the dog wells should be protected. There are guidelines, WHO have guidelines on what we call water safety plans. So I guess the WHO water safety plans should be the basis for improving stepwise improving the water quality. So
they would provide some kind of indication of what steps could be taken, and those steps could be modified to suit the local context. Is that right?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, super. Many thanks for that again, Claus. I think without further ado, we'll go on to Jørn and his presentation.
You're very welcome.
Yes, hello. I'm Jørn Claus Jørgensen. I'm a biologist. I work with water quality for many years. Today will talk a little bit about how water quality and ecology is impacted by both natural and human activity. This is a huge topic, and of course I cannot cover everything, even not nearly everything, but I will have tried to pick something out that hopefully can give you an idea. If you look at the natural factors that can influence the water quality and the ecology, We have, of course, all the meteorological elements that influence the conditions under which organism lives, and how much runoff we have, and dilution, and that kind of things. So of course the meteorology have an important issue, and we have to take that into account when we make the assessment of impacts. But also the nature of the system, the water bodies, the hydraulics, for example, in the system. There's obvious that rough water or a small creek have very different conditions and than compared to a more standing water or slow flowing meandering rivers. And if you look at also at the bathymetry or the morphology of the water bodies in more detail, it's absolutely important to understand what the baseline conditions should be. And for example, for lakes, it's important what depth we have. It's a deep lake with stratified water bodies, warm water in the top, cold water in the bottom. It's a small box, it's a big lake. So of course these things have to be taken into account when assessing these issues. But when we look at human activities and how these are influencing water quality, then of course the first thing we often think about, that is pollution. Pollution from domestic, industrial and commercial sources. And these of course increase concentrations in our environment of different substances, nutrients, pesticides, heavy metals, which can create unhealthy and toxic conditions for the environment, for the organism in the environment. I will return a little bit to that in a few minutes. If you look at other things like damming, damming is a thing we do for many purposes. It can be for regulation of flow and reducing flooding. It can be for saving water for irrigation or drinking water, industrial purpose, hydropower, and so on. And this is something that really are going on these years and have also been carried out for many years, of course. But this is really a threat to many of our natural rivers. We really change the condition there in these, and I will also return to that. If we look at another thing for our rivers, that is, we often have regulated our rivers heavily for different purposes. This can be for creating a runoff of water just to get rid of the water at a certain rate. It can be for creating navigation, inland waterway traffic navigation, and for maintaining the rivers as that, we also dredge our rivers, and this again have significant impact on the ecosystems there and the water quality. Then we have all our agriculture sectors, non-point sources from fertilizers, from use of pesticides, more point-like sources from domestic animals, manure spreading, and that kind of things that can highly influence. And as well, the agriculture can also contribute with, when we feed the organism in the agriculture, we add nutrients, organic material to the system, and this of course have some impact on these ecosystems. But there are also a lot of other issues, natural resource utilization of many types, transfer of water from one catchment to another one. It can be sand mining in rivers, it can be collecting of natural resources, it can be fishing. There are a lot of things that can influence it, that is human induced. And as I said, there's a lot more. And of course, we can come to climate change. And Jesper will hereafter give that a little more focus. So I will not touch that just now, but have a little look on some of the more specific impacts. If you look at the pollution, we often focus on nutrients, organic matter and nutrients. And if you look what consequence, I mean, this can come from agriculture, domestic, industrial, a lot of sources come from. And what is normally do, it's if we have a standing water, that is create eutrophication. Eutrophication that create algae blooms, Finally, in extreme events, it can create fish dying. The algae can be toxic. We can create anoxic condition in our water bodies due to high production of organic material and consumption of oxygen. But it also influence more delicate the entire balance, ecological balance in the ecosystems. The growth of algae will decrease the light that's penetrate into a lake, and the natural, very important vegetation in the beds, in the near shore areas will decrease. It can change the composition of fish population in a lake. It can often change it against more small fish, planctorious fish, and as I said, if we have a stratified lake, then the sedimentation of the produced organic matter can create anoxic condition in the bottom. So that is one of these impacts this can have. But also other basic pollution events we see from outlet of sewage. That is that we often can see oxygen depletion directly from sewage going into our streams and reservoirs and lakes, creating black water, and that of course have a great impact on the environment. Typical is a curve like this. That's from a curve from a textbook showing that what happened after outfall. Immediately after an outfall, we have some high concentration of organic material. Here is illustrated biological oxygen demand. The degradation of that creates decline in oxygen, and then in case there's not coming much more pollution into the system, then it's possible in the stream system that we can have a self-purification down along the river. But what impact does that have on the environment? It have a change in the organism, so we get very high concentration of, here is tuberculosis, that is worms and mosquito larvae, which is very tolerant to pollution. And then first, when the self-purification have occurred, then some of the more clean water fauna can come in again. The other, of course, pollution, heavy metal, there are a lot of harmful organic compounds, pesticides, phthalates, oil derivatives that can have something like the same impact, and often it's very difficult to distinguish. These come often together and we have a combined effect which can give the same picture as just described. If you look something else, we have the damming. As I said, damming can have a lot of different impacts. If you look at the reservoir, we see that we can have a regulation zone where nearly nothing can live in the reservoir. We can have drying out of streams. Here we see a wall from a dam, and down there there's nearly no flow. Of course, this has great impact on the environment. We can have outflow of water, which give very rough water. We can have increased concentration of nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, and oxygen in the water that also can come to such high concentration that harm the fish in the system. We can, as a consequence of this regulation, we can change the hydrograph significantly, which minimize the contact between river, can minimize the contact between river and a floodplain, wetland area, which can have a huge impact on ecology there.
Sorry, 2 minutes, please, yeah?
Yes, that's fine. Here, just a list of some of these impacts from damming. We have also impact from, for example, such activities as inland waterway navigation, where we also regulate the rivers to a great extent, and where we take out the natural dynamic of the rivers. It can mean that we dry out part of the river, we push more water into the main part of the river where we need to have navigation. These things have some of the similar impact as those we have from our damming project, in fact. There are a lot of similarity there. Then we can of course discuss how can we distinguish between natural induced change, the impact from human activities. And this can be difficult. We have year-to-year variation, among others, due to these meteorological conditions, and therefore it can be difficult. But some of these impacts are, of course, obvious. When we see fish dying, oxygen depletion, acute toxic impact, then it's clear that's something human activities. But there may be other that is much more difficult to realize whether it's human or whether it's natural variation we see. This is something that on a lower level, change in the eutrophication levels, change in fish stocks, biodiversity in the system, can be very difficult to really assess what's the reason for this is. And for some of these assessments, it's absolutely important to have information about natural driving forces, methodology, human, and also information about the human pressures that we put on the area. Without having good information about that, it's difficult to say much. Then what tool can we use? We have at least two group of tools we can use for this kind of analysis. There's a statistic analysis, trend analysis, and multivariate analysis, for example. That can be very helpful, and we can also use modeling analysis where we in fact have models that include all the pressures and the driving forces, flow through the system, the load to the system, and then meteorological condition, and then we can use this model to make some simulation where we change the input driving forces and see how much that will impact the system. So there are these two main type of analysis that can be carried out if you want to focus on analyze whether it's natural reason or whether it's human activities that are the main reason. Thank you for this time.
And many thanks to you too as well, Jørgen. In relation to human or natural causes or activities, I have a question for you from one of the participants. It is, when you see foam on a lake, is it because of sewage or detergents or effluents, or is it from more natural causes? Would you like to say a few words about that?
What is foam, you said?
Yeah, when you see foam or froth on a lake.
Foam can be introduced by pollution, but is not necessary. That's the reason. Foam is introduced, you also see that below a waterfall or a rough running river or at the coast area. This foam can be formed by dissolved organic material in the water that is from physical action is put together, aggregate together, and make these macromolecular formations. Of course, if you have more organic material in the water, you have more foam. You create more foam, but it's not necessary due to pollution. But if you have polluted area with high organic content, then you will probably have more foam.
Okay, many thanks for that clarification, Jørgen. I will now pass the microphone over to Jesper, and just to remind you, Jesper will be talking about water scarcity and climate change, as well as the impacts on water quality.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jesper Danistø. I'm also a biologist working at DHI, and I'm mainly working with the large-scale infrastructure, water quality, EIA, and monitoring. My topic today is to look at water scarcity and climate change, which is more or less what my two colleagues have also talked about, but I will sort of change the way that we are looking at things. Now, if we are looking at what we would do, of course, when we talk water scarcity and climate change, a lot of the discussion is always what is going to happen and where are we? We know that some regions may experience more rain. We may also know that some areas will have less rain, and there may also be changes when the rain comes and which season it comes. Maybe we will actually see changes in that. And if you look at this picture here, you will see on the top temperature changes as has been for the last many years to the left, and then to the right you will see the future expectancies. We're still talking about expectancies. Nobody knows exactly, but we have some tendencies, and you can see that areas at right now who may have a little bit of high temperatures may have extremely much higher temperatures in the future. The lower one looks at the average precipitation, and there you can also see that some areas will experience more rain, heavily much more rain, and some areas will not have much more. So this has to be taken into context when we talk about what are the changes. Now, what can change the water quality, as one of the questions is for this one? Of course, if we change from rain patterns where we have sort of a drizzle and instead we have some very short but heavy downpours, that will change because it may also have an impact directly on how water is moved towards, for instance, the river. Then the frequency between the rainfalls will also have a possibility to change the water quality, and also how do we build up our cities and how do we treat the wastewater, because changes in rain will also give changes in how we may have to change or treat our wastewater. And of course, as you have also heard from Claus and from Jørgen, agricultural and use of pesticides and fertilizers will also play a role. Now, just take one example. For instance, if we look at drizzle or heavy rain, when you have a drizzle, you usually won't have very much in terms of surface runoff because the rain that falls will normally be absorbed in the soil. But if you have heavy rains in, then you will have surface runoff. Stormwater overflow doesn't happen during drizzle, but during heavy rains, yes, they are there. Reduced wastewater treatment capacity, yes, certainly when you have heavy rains, because then it is impossible to treat all that comes to the treatment plant. And of course, the soil absorption capacity is usually much better when you have a drizzle, because then the soil will be adapted to absorb the water as it comes, whereas with heavy rain, you may have it completely saturated in the top layer and it cannot suck down any new water. Frequencies between rain events will also have some very big consequences. I have shown you two pictures here. If you look at the one to the right first, you see a guy coming with his waste bin because suddenly some rain came and there was water in the river, and they also all decided that now this is time to empty all our waste into the river because then we get rid of it. What we usually call this is the first flush. That means that a lot of contaminated things have built up on the surface, and when the rain comes, then of course all this flushes off first. So if you have very long time between the rain events, you will have a lot of dirt being built up if you don't have proper cleaning. And if you have short time between the rains, of course you will have less that can go with the rain and the rivers into the surface water. The changes in our urban landscape has also been done very often without developing good infrastructure. That means that if we don't have good rainwater or stormwater systems or retention systems or street cleaning or wastewater treatment, all these factors will of course have an impact on the water quality out in our surface waters. Now, wastewater treatment, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals number 6, which now says ensure access to water and sanitation for all, you heard from Claus that 2.4 billion people do not have access to sanitation system, and more than 80% of the world's wastewater is discharged untreated to the environment. Look at these two numbers, and of course you will see that we have a big reason for having our surface waters, our oceans, rivers, streams, everything polluted, because there's nothing to stop the key areas of pollution coming into the water. So there's a lot to do. Now, from the agricultural sector, we also know that pesticides and fertilizers, just like Jørgen told you, that there will be some problems if you have too much of those ones coming out. The pesticides may directly kill off the animals, and the fertilizers will bring the system into a situation where we have eutrophication, which in itself will also limit the amount of animals that can actually live out there. Another problem that we very often see some places is that pesticides are used uncontrolled and often without any knowledge about how they should actually be used. The information on each of the bottles that you would see if you came to a developed country and bought them may not be there, because some people will buy up the pesticides, fill them into different kind of soft water bottles, and people will just buy sort of a plastic bottle somewhere without actually knowing what is the exact dosage and when should it be used. So we see a very big threat on the water quality from such areas. And of course, in a climate change where we may see some more changes in the way that we are growing our crops, we may have more of these uncontrolled use of chemistry that we do not actually want. Water scarcity, as one of the titles of this one, is of course a very, very big problem, because we have these climate changes that will actually exacerbate the water scarcity as a whole. We will see an increase in abstraction of drinking water, increase in water for agriculture, and of course also for industrial production. If we look at it sort of directly, it is of course mainly created by the fact that a lot of people are moving into the cities. They need drinking water, and they also of course need the water for the wastewater treatment, and the populations are growing. Will be a lot more people within a few years, and everybody wants to have their share of drinking water. So if we have situations where we don't have that much water, we really have to look into how can we actually distribute the water available so that everybody has a chance to survive on the water available. Can we counteract some of these water scarcities? Well, if you look at many big cities around the world, and I would say we are probably talking about 2/3 of all cities in the world, they are losing between 40 to 50, even sometimes 70% of all the water they send out in the water supply system, simply because the water supply system is leaking. So that is one area. Why do we lose so much water? Because the water lost under the city cannot be used again. It's usually lost in areas where it will be heavily polluted. We may also have to change crops to less water demanding types so we can save something on the water, and of course also have a smarter way of doing what we are doing with the crops. We may also come in a situation where the crops that we have been growing in specific areas for maybe for centuries, we simply may have to change that. One thing which is happening right now is, of course, there's a lot going on in optimizing how the industry is using water. But the big problem is that many places water is simply too cheap. So you know that the price of water, if we put a good price on water, that will always help to change the attitude of how we use the water. We need to harvest all available water. We have to store it one way or the other, use it for whatever we can, and then use the surplus water for recharging groundwater, and use the treated wastewater for drinking water, for production water, and water for other purposes. Now, a little example: a guy or a mayor in the United States, he wanted to get people to understand that now they were going to treat wastewater and to drink it, and he used this slogan, "From toilet to tap." Maybe that was not the smartest way to sell the idea that people should drink water which came actually from the toilets or from the wastewater. So he changed it into this one instead, which probably went down much better with all the participants or the citizens. So we are back to the fact that awareness and understanding of what we are doing is very important if you want to save the scarce water resources we have left, and also to make sure that we are not polluting those resources that we actually have left. So there's a big idea in saying that climate change may be the smallest cause of impact on water quality. Actually, the way we behave today is the biggest impact on water quality. So with these words, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that my presentation gave you a few ideas on how to think in the future.
Many thanks for that presentation, Jesper. I can see that time is running away from us, but we have some good questions come in, so I think we should probably use a few minutes addressing those, and hopefully people can hang on and hear the answers. So question for you, Jesper. is here. A lot of attention in developing countries is given to pollution from pathogens, but what about pollution from industrial activities? What can be done about these?
Well, industrial pollution is a big problem, and one of the reasons why it has grown so much is simply that the legislation in many countries does not live up to standards that should actually protect, because whenever you give a permit for an industry, you can of course also set limits to what they are allowed to discharge. We have seen many places where such discharge permits are given, but the industry couldn't care less because there is not very much in terms of enforcement. Nobody comes and checks it, and that means that they can actually pollute without anything happening. Now, take a look at China. I think they realize now that they have to go back to a situation where they actually go in and check that the discharge permits they have given is also followed to the word.
Okay, many thanks for that answer, Jesper. I'd like to invite Jørn to unmute his microphone to respond to this one. It's a question that is about what may be the impacts of covering the surface of lakes to minimize evapotranspiration, and the person asking the question cites an example in California where this is being done behind a dam. So what would be the impacts on the ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems?
I'm not sure how it's done, but if you try to cover the surface to reduce evaporation, then probably you also will reduce the re-aeration. So, and probably also the sun that penetrate into the water, depending on how you're doing it and what material you're using for that. I mean, reducing the re-aeration can be critical for lakes, because when the wind action, we have the wind action on the surface, then we create a re-aeration, we create also a circulation in the lake and or the reservoir, and that can be very, very important for maintaining a healthy lake. And also the light has to come down to create a life condition for different plants and vegetation. So if that is inhibited, then you also have really big implication for the ecosystem, and you can in fact more or less kill the lake by doing that.
Great, thanks for that. And while you have your mic open, I have another question on ecology for you, and that is, what is your view of the major river linking projects in India? What are the consequences of linking rivers, not just in India but also globally, of these kinds of projects?
When you link rivers, then it's probably because you want to divert water from one catchment to another, because you had to use it for some purpose. And the catchment from which you take it, that will of course have less water, and that can have a great impact in these catchments. But you have to look at it very locally, and you have also, you say, okay, maybe I can take some of the water without doing too much harm, but you have really to look at your, what we call the environmental flow in those catchments. And it's not only a minimum flow we are talking about here. In most ecosystems, you need to have a certain hydrograph where you have some floodings in between, you have some connections with the floodplains and so on. Also for migration of fish and other organisms, it's important that you have some variation in the flow. So you should really be careful in doing that, and be sure that you have a good estimation of the necessary environmental flow at different seasons in those catchments where you take the water from.
Many thanks for that response. If I could ask you to mute your mic and for Jesper to open his mic. I have a final question for Jesper.
Yes.
Many thanks for all the questions that have been coming in, but I'm aware of time. Question for you, Jesper. Will irrigation water from agriculture and runoff from agricultural fields contaminate deeper in aquifer systems, for example, greater than 200 meters and above?
Well, that is a very difficult question because I would have to know a lot about the local geology. In principle, the runoff from, and when we talk runoff, that is, so to speak, a one-way direction of water running from the agricultural field into the surface water. And from there, it will usually not have any chance to penetrate deeply into the soil. But if you have soils, of course, there might be a chance that something which you put on the soil may actually end down in the deep aquifer, especially if you are using pesticides which may be spread in areas where you have deep dug wells or even bored wells where water may go down along the borehole and actually contaminate both the primary and secondary and even the tertiary aquifer layers. But it's a very open question depending very much on the local geology.
Thanks for that, Jesper. And please let me close by thanking you all for listening in. This was number 2, of course, of a series of webinars, as I mentioned. If you have any questions or comments on the content here, as well as how we're going to be putting it up and making it more available, please mail my colleague Maya, whose email address is here. Also, as mentioned, the webinar recording and slides are going to be made available on YouTube and from our own website, link here. And we'd also like to hear what you think about what we presented here and how we can make it better, or of course your more positive words. So if you could respond to the survey that we send you, that would be much appreciated. And finally, let me invite you all to our next webinar, which will be on October the 14th, and it will deal with frameworks for water quality governance. And in this webinar, we'll be looking at policies, governance frameworks, how to involve stakeholders in a participatory way. So please feel free to register straight away. The link is available there, but also if you go to our webpage, you'll be able to see the link there and click on that directly. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you can join us again. Bye-bye.